Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome back to yet another episode on Little's Law YouTube channel. So, in our few of our previous videos, we are discussing about the assertions, the JMeter assertions. In our previous videos, we have discussed about the JSR 223 assertion and the other one, which is the response assertion. So, in this video, we are going to discuss about the size assertion. So what is a size assertion and why are we going to use it? So in this video, since size assertion is too simple to know, we will discuss about the various advantages, the limitations and the disadvantages of using the size assertion. So this is going to be a different way of approaching the size assertion. So I believe this video would be more interesting and informative to you. So please don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you are visiting our channel for the very first time, and please like, comment and subscribe and share the video with your friends. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do subscribe to our channel and please do support us. Okay, so let's go to the video. So today we're going to see about adding a size assertion, which is a third option, and this is a size assertion. So here we have multiple options of applying the samples, of applying the assertions to main sample and subsamples, and we have the main sample and then subsample and then the JMeter variable name to use. So most of the time we will use the main sample and the subsample because this will almost cover the entire response that we get, or the response headers or the response body or the response codes. So under the response size field to test, we have multiple responses like the full response or the response headers or the response body, the response code and the response message. So let's start with the very first example. So here we are going to try with the full response, and for example, so in this one I'm going to just give a sample size of 100, or just I'll make it as 1000 bytes in size, and I'm having the comparison tool as equals, right? So if the size in bytes is equal to 1000, this condition will pass, otherwise this will fail. So let's see, let me run the test, and I'm going to the view results tree. So this is failed because this response assertion, the response is 5419 bytes. So that is the actual size of the response, so that's the reason it has failed. So let me change it to the 5419 size in bytes, and then when we run this test again, so I'm just clearing the response, like the previous test, and then I'm running the test again, and here since it has passed, so there is no any assertion failures. And then in case if I'm changing it to not equals, and when I'm running the test again, and here we could see it has failed since the assertion is equal to 5419, and when we are trying it is not equal to, so we are getting this response in the assertion. So same way we have different ways of testing it. So there is this greater than symbol, and then when we test it, so here we will see, so when we test this, so the assertion tells us that it was 5419 bytes, but it should have been greater than 5419 bytes. So in case if we want to check like 5400, let me change it to 5400, and then when we test it now, so this should pass because it's greater than 54, and yes, so it has passed. And then let's check the other one, which is lesser than. It should fail, yes, as we assume. So it has failed because it's not less than 5400, it's greater than 5400 bytes, and same way it's less than equal to and greater than equal to. So in all these options, so even the response headers or the response body or the response code or the response message, so everything, so every response field, size field to test, everything has the option to test it with the size to assert. So what are the advantages, or why are we doing this? So is this just a size, or what exactly, or where exactly are we going to apply this size assertions in testing? So let's now see those. So these are the importance, or I would say the applications of using the size assertions in JMeter. So the first one, the response validation. So if we are testing, so in most of our scenarios, we are nowadays using the APIs for testing. So in case if we are testing an API or web application, it's important to ensure that the response we receive is not only correct but also complete. So in most of the scenarios, we might get a 200 as a response code, right? So we get a 200 as a response code, but are we sure that is this complete? So to confirm that the response we are getting is complete, we have to use this size assertion, and a size assertion can help us to verify that the response we receive is of the expected size and can alert us the potential issues if the response is too small or too large. So that is the reason we are using the response validation. And when it comes to the second part, which is the load testing, so when we are performing a load testing, we might want to, or we may want to verify that the size of the response does not exceed a certain threshold, and this can help us to identify the performance bottlenecks in our application or infrastructure, and it helps us to optimize our system to handle large volumes of traffic. So what is the importance of doing this during the load testing is to test that it should not exceed a certain threshold. So that is the reason we are using the size assertion during the load testing. And then when it comes to security testing, so in some cases the attackers might attempt to exploit a vulnerability in our application by sending a large payload that could cause our application to crash or become unresponsive, right? So when it comes to security, so they might try to do a DDoS attack or any kind of attack, and they try to make our application to crash. So in those scenarios, by using a size assertion, we can verify our application can handle a request of a certain size and that it is not vulnerable to these type of attacks. So to test or to safeguard our application from any security attacks, we use this size assertions. And then when it comes to compliance testing, the fourth one, the compliance testing. So in case if our application needs to comply with certain standards or regulations, such as PCI, DSS, HIPAA, or GDPR, we might need to verify the size of the certain response does not exceed certain limits or thresholds. Again, when it comes to the compliances, something which is very important when we are testing an application which comes under the GDPR. So this is very important, so because a size assertion can helps us to ensure that our application meets these requirements, these compliances. So that's the reason we use these size assertions for compliance testing. And when it comes to troubleshooting, if we encounter any unexpected behavior or errors in our application, a size assertion can help us to identify whether the issue is related to the size of the response. For example, if we receive an error message indicating that the response was too large to process, we can use a size assertion to verify whether the response size is exceeding the maximum allowed limit. So that is where the size assertion helps us in the troubleshooting. The sixth one, which is the API contract testing. So why do we need the size assertion in API contract testing is when testing an API which has a defined contract or specification such as an open API or Swagger, we can use a size assertion to verify that the responses conform to the expected schema and structure. So that's very important. So we might need to know whether it has the expected schema and structure. So that is the reason we are using this size assertion for the API contract testing, and this can help us to catch issues such as missing fields, unexpected data types, or incorrectly formatted responses. So overall, the size assertion is a simple but powerful tool that helps us that can help us to verify the correctness, completeness, and security of our application or API. So when it comes to the eighth option, so the seventh option, which is the customization. So the JMeter allows us to customize the size assertion to suit the specific needs. For example, we can choose to test the size of the entire response or just a specific part. Say for example here, so we can choose the entire response or just a specific part, something like the response headers or just the response body or the response code or the response message. So we can also specify the size threshold in bytes, kilobytes or megabytes, and can choose whether the assertion should pass if the response size is greater than, less than or equal to the specified thresholds. So when it comes to the eighth point, which is integration with other assertions, so JMeter allows us to combine multiple assertions. So this allows us to combine multiple assertions in a single test plan, which helps us to create more comprehensive test. For example, we could use a response code assertion to verify the response status code is correct, and a size assertion to verify the response size is within an acceptable range. Right? So we were combining the size assertion and the response code assertion in a single test so that we can identify whether it is complete and correct. And then when it comes to the performance impact, is the ninth one. So keeping in mind that the size assertion can have a performance impact on our test, especially if we are testing a large responses or running tests with high concurrency, we should use the assertion judicially and consider disabling it for certain scenarios, such as when running tests with a small number of users or when testing very simple APIs. And finally, the last point, which is the reporting and analysis, where the JMeter provides detailed test results and reports that can help us to analyze the behavior of our system under different loads and conditions. The size assertion can provide valuable insights into the performance and scalability of our application and can help us to identify the potential issues before they become critical. So these are the various advantages or the importance of using size assertions in JMeter. Now we will discuss the limitations and the disadvantage of using size assertions, because we must not be in an assumption that the size assertion is very helpful and we cannot use that in every other part of testing. So we will see what are the limitations and disadvantages of size assertions now. So starting with the binary data for the limitations and disadvantages. So when it comes to the binary data, the size assertion in JMeter works by counting the number of bytes in the response, which may not always be accurate for binary data or compressed responses. So in these cases, the actual size of the response may be different from what JMeter reports, which can lead to false positives or false negatives. And when it comes to the dynamic content, if our web application generates dynamic content such as a personalized recommendations or search results, the size of the response may vary depending on the input parameters or user context. In these cases, it may be difficult to set a fixed size threshold for the size assertion that accurately reflects the expected response size. And then thirdly, when it comes to the unpredictable response sizes, some web applications may generate responses with unpredictable sizes such as streaming video or real-time data feeds, which can make it difficult to use a size assertion to validate the response. In these cases, other testing techniques such as a functional testing or performance testing may be inappropriate. And when it comes to the false positive or negative, as with any automation testing tool, the size assertion may produce false positives, that is, it reports a failure when the response is actually correct, or false negatives, that is, it reports a success when the response is actually incorrect. So these can be caused by a variety of factors such as network latency, server load, or unexpected data. And when it comes to the performance impact, the size assertion can have a performance impact on our test, especially if we are testing large responses or running tests with high concurrency. And this can affect the accuracy and reliability of our test results and can also increase the time and resources required to run our tests. And then when it comes to the limited scope, the size assertion checks the size of the response only the size of the response and does not provide any information about the content or quality of the response. This means that it may not be sufficient for certain types of testing, such as content validation or security testing. And when it comes to handling the inability of dynamic data, if a web application generates responses with dynamic data such as timestamps or randomly generated values, the response sizes may vary even if the content is the same, and this can lead to false positive or false negative with the size assertion. And when it comes to the complexity, the size assertion can be difficult to configure correctly, especially for complex web applications or APIs that generate large or dynamic responses. In addition, it may require additional resources such as the CPU or memory to process and validate large responses, and this can affect the overall performance of our test environment. And then when it comes to lack of context, the size assertion does not provide any contextual information about the response, such as the request that generated the response or the expected behavior of the application. This means that it may be difficult to diagnose and troubleshoot issues based solely on the size assertion results. And then finally, when it comes to the false sense of security, while the size assertion can help us to ensure that the response size is within acceptable limits, it may not provide any indication of other issues that could affect the quality or reliability of our application, such as performance bottlenecks or security vulnerabilities. Therefore, relying on the size assertion may give us a false sense of security. So with that, we come to an end. I think this would be a totally different video on discussing the assertions, and I believe this video would have given you some useful information. So until I meet you in another interesting video, it's bye bye from Vasan Shanmugam and Little's Law.